Welcome to another episode of Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. This is a show which highlights the importance of estate planning and why everyone needs to do it. And of course, the unfortunate consequences of what happens far too often when people have not planned. I'm your host, John Braddock, the author of Click Here When I Die and the founder of My Life and Wishes, the Legacy Vault, an online planning and document storage solution created to make things easier for those that you love. Today, I am thrilled to introduce my very special guest and friend, attorney William Ravenell, the founder and managing attorney of Ravenell Law. Also, he's an avid Philadelphia sports fan. Go Sixers, go Flyers, go Phillies, and of course our bird, go Eagles.
That's
For
right.
the audience that doesn't, the audience that doesn't know my background, I'm from Medford, New Jersey, just a short hop across the Delaware River from Philly. So even though I'm out in Arizona, once a Philly fan, always a Philly fan. But before we jump in, let me give you a little of Bill's background. Bill is a distinguished attorney holding degrees from the University of Virginia, the Temple Beasley School of Law, and Cornell University. Licensed in both Pennsylvania and New Jersey, he is a devoted advocate in estate planning and elder care law, helping clients balance and enrich their lives through prudent stewardship of time, abilities, and financial resources. His counsel is extremely mindful and resourceful. Dedicating his practice exclusively to estate planning and elder care law, Bill and his team at Ravenell Law empower their clients across the broad spectrum of family and wealth planning challenges. He specializes in legal strategies to support families caring for loved ones who require extended assistance for basic living needs. Ravenell Law also excels in guiding their clients through planning strategies to alleviate the caregiving burden on other family members. They specialize in drafting individualized advanced medical directives, protecting inheritances from nursing home fees, and helping families make financially sound decisions. Bill's goal is to enhance his clients' ability to live comfortably and most of all with peace of mind. With a rich family legacy in law, Bill is committed to delivering focused and comprehensive services. And Ravenell Law stands out for its counseling-oriented approach, tailoring customized plans to each client's unique goals and needs. Bill lives in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania, with his wife and their 3 children. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be on the podcast with you.
Oh, very, very happy to have you. And, you and I have had many conversations through the years and about the excitement we get with our sports teams in Philadelphia, and then sometimes the disappointment that shortly follows.
Oh, yeah,
But,
absolutely.
Oh, gosh. So, hey, as our audience knows, I love talking about passion, the why behind what people do and why they do it and what gets them out of bed in the morning. Can you share what, influenced your decision to focus on estate planning and elder law rather than, the 80 other practice areas that are in the legal field?
Sure, absolutely. I had a very kind of long trail of an introduction into estate planning, elder care law. Eventually, like previously at the firm where I got my start, we were a general practice law firm. So I kind of got the opportunity to see everything. So I was practicing bankruptcy, various litigation, personal injury, real estate. But there was an attorney there who was, somewhat of a mentor, and she kind of turned me on to estate administration. And I found that I really enjoyed working with families. And so it so worked out that there was a gentleman who was in my section at law school, and he called me one day and he asked me if I was interested in joining him to start an elder care law firm from scratch. So I read a bit about it, and I think at the time period, I was literally trying to serve several individuals in Afghanistan for a contract litigation case. I think it was Christmas Eve, and I thought just based on sort of the work pressure and, the pace of litigation that, I wanted to take a very close look at the opportunity to practice in a more of a transactional frame, seeing that I had enjoyed that, that sort of work before. And so we started an elder care law firm that kind of branched off into estate planning. My mother was actually a law professor at the University of Virginia. She taught transfer tax and estate planning. And so as I began to practice, she sent me some resources to review and to study. And I found that I enjoyed meeting with families. I enjoyed building relationships. It is unfortunate that a lot of the people that I became, the attorney of their estates, had their estate plans done by either another attorney or none at all. And I was put in a position of trying to help them dig out of a difficult situation that, hopefully that can be avoided with proactive planning. And I think the most enjoyable part is meeting families, proactive planning, just educating individuals about what their opportunities and their options are, and sort of watching their families continue to grow and evolve over time.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's the one thing I love about estate planning attorneys. I mean, it it it's pretty much the only area of law, and albeit there's some others, but it's the only one that's really proactive in nature. It seems like everything else is reactive, right? When you're doing your bankruptcy stuff, well, that's reactive
Exactly. Yeah. Sure.
things, right? Um, personal injury, criminal law, that's reactive stuff.
Yes.
And even family law, right? I talked to an attorney up in Chicago here not too long ago and spent 17 years in family law, transitioning his practice into estate planning. And he said, John, the reason I want to do that is I'm tired of fighting. It's all just fights that go on.
Yes.
And in this area, you've got people who see the big picture. They don't want their families to get tied up in court, spend a lot of time, and it just brings that sense of love and peace of mind, and maybe the greatest gift you can leave to your family, right?
Absolutely. No, I think so. And of course, personally, I've recently, gone through a state administration's, myself with my father, and it can take time, when you are dealing with an estate administration or dealing with, even a reasonably complex estate or something that may seem simple. Um, truly a gift that we can, give our dearly departed is just having an organized estate plan that can, be easily administered and doesn't take time. Because one of the major concerns that I get in working with families is how long it takes to find assets, to access assets, to have funds readily available to pay for estate obligations, whether that's the bills, mortgage, funeral arrangements, everything. And then you get into those complicated situations where you have beneficiaries living on estate properties or something of that nature, and all those things with the right and appropriate proactive planning, can be hedged against, so that it's there's going to be inevitably there's going to be challenges whenever you have a transition, but certainly there are tools, methods, and thinking, modes of thinking to make that a little bit easier on the people that are kind of carrying the legacy forward.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like to say, hey, if you think life is hard, death is a lot harder. Well, the dying part, that's not hard.
Right.
Everybody's going to have that. But the unraveling of life is intensive. Doesn't have to be, with proper planning. But for
You're
those who
right.
haven't planned,
Absolutely. And it's only gotten more, you know, challenging, confusing, just because, now with all of these new, kind of social media, electronic banking, phantom currency, fiat currency, it's more and more difficult to track down assets. Assets are not necessarily all brick, mortar, cash banking anymore. It's, stock bonds in brokerage accounts with numbers. The insurance policies get lost all the time. I can't tell you how many times we've had people who are, they pass away and and they had an insurance policy, but they didn't bother to change the beneficiary. It ends up in the Treasury Department, and it is actually very difficult to extract those types of items. It's difficult just to find the items,
oh
and
yeah,
many,
I heard a study a number of years back that said it's somewhere near a billion with a B dollars of life insurance has gone unclaimed simply because beneficiaries didn't know that they were a beneficiary on a policy. And as I
oh
used to
yeah,
tell people, life insurance is awesome. I don't care who you are. Everyone needs some life insurance. Bill Gates needs life insurance. Different reasons than you and I might need it, right? But everyone needs it. But it's only good if someone knows you have it.
you're right. So in the Pennsylvania unclaimed property division, uh, last I checked a couple weeks ago, there were $4 billion worth of unclaimed assets in just Pennsylvania. So
In PA alone.
PA alone. So you can imagine state by state, depending upon the population. It's just billions of dollars of assets that are just sitting there. In fact, John, I had an attorney that I previously shared an office with. His entire practice was based on finder fees. He would check, the database of the Treasury Department. He would find a sort of a large enough lost amount of assets, and he would call and he would say, "Hey, I can, get you access to this asset, provided you pay me a finder fee of 10-15%." So that's all he did. He'd be working 4 or 5 of these every month, and that was the focus of his practice. Just trying to get people access and reimbursed or from assets that they get people their inheritance.
Yeah. And the thing is, every state has their unclaimed property fund, right? And you think about it, when I grew up, I mean, my grandparents, were 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 born in the South Jersey area. They grew up, they had the family that lived there, they died there. That was it. I have lived in New Jersey, New Hampshire, Florida, Colorado, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, and now Arizona. I have no idea. I should, go on to the unclaimed property fund of all the various states and search. I
Yeah.
mean, who knows what I've left behind?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I had even myself, when I came back, I lived in, I mentioned, previously in our previous conversations, I lived overseas for 5 years. And when I came back and went to grad school, I received a check somehow from unclaimed property. It was only $500, but I tell you, when you're a grad student, um, you know, eating the equivalent of gruel, to keep going every day, that $500 seemed like, it was a real windfall to me at the time. And that was from the unclaimed department in Virginia. And depending upon this, part of the point I'm trying to make is, depending upon the estate, that it really matters how accessible those funds are. Pennsylvania is extremely difficult to extract funds from the lost claims department. It takes a fair amount of work and litigation, and you have to really be on the ball, sending a lot of correspondence to make sure you receive it. Virginia, in that instance, that seemed like it was it was a lot easier. I didn't even know that I had money lost in Virginia, and only to come to find that I did have some money coming my way. So
Wow. Yeah, regardless of whether it was when I was in my 20s and like you eating hobo stew every night for dinner,
that's right. Yeah.
$500, that buy a heck of a lot of ramen noodles, right?
Absolutely.
Um, but I tell you what, I'm not going to turn down $500 right now. I don't know who would.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
it ain't going to change my lifestyle, but it's going to pay a bill or two.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And also, I mean, in a lot of these treasury departments, but there are sort of lost funds. These insurance policies, 30, 40, 50, $100,000 just sitting there, a lot of times kind of waiting for the next heir in line, to inherit that. I mean, wouldn't it be great if there was, some method that we could somehow keep track of all these items so that these types of things wouldn't have to happen?
Oh boy, I think I know something that can do that. It might be called the Legacy Vault
That's
by My
right.
Life
That's
Anyway.
right.
So thanks for teeing that one up for me to hit. So hey, so I love stories, and we call the show estate planning nightmares, and how to avoid them, and not necessarily to scare people, right? But to get people to think if they haven't done their planning, because these real life stories that estate planning attorneys share that you've lived through and seen families live through can be eye opening. So yeah, I'm wondering if you might have a particular story you'd love to share with our audience.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm sort of dialing through the mental Rolodex to try and figure out, which one might be the best. But I tell you, I'm dealing with the situation now where I'm working with a family who, they're in a situation where they had, grandma and grandpa owned about 3 properties, retired police officer, retired teacher. They had pensions that were aimed at each other. Um, the grandfather, he actually never drew up a will. And I think there were 5 grandchildren involved. So the grandmother, she passed away first, and essentially all of her assets went to her husband, who was, I think it was a second marriage as well. So, the grandchildren are, some of them were hers, I think, from a first marriage, and some of them were not. Some of them were his. And what ended up happening in that case is that essentially all of her assets became locked because all the pensions were supposed to go to him, but there was no one available to step up and administer his estate. So it took some time to get the grandchildren to agree, who would step forward and take responsibility. They ended up choosing, um, the child that stepped forward, or like, she's a woman, or the grandchild that stepped forward. She lived in a different state. So she was able to come up to Pennsylvania to get sworn in for her grandmother's estate. But then when the grandfather died shortly after that, she was not able to come up. So we had to get the kids to disclaim. And then there's a process of, we had to put in claims for the pension. We had to put in claims for the life insurance. There are properties where beneficiaries are living in the properties, nothing specifically stating what should happen to those properties. All of those things these are all things that should have been addressed with a robust amount of estate planning, ideally 10, 15, or at least a few years, prior to, grandma and grandpa kind of becoming ill. The grandfather, he had hoped or, his family had hoped that he would have had the opportunity to write a will, but he just lacked capacity. And because he lacked capacity, now we are in the middle of, trying to gather these assets and claim these assets, and make and alert beneficiaries to know they can no longer stay in property. And it's turned into a very difficult situation for, the administrator of the estate. She's put in a position where she has to, essentially evict family out of property. A lot of the money that's being claimed is unfortunately being eaten up by legal fees. And, and there's a lot of attorneys out there that, they make their living on being able to charge large fees for chaotic estates with lack of planning. And I got to tell you, John, my preference actually would be I would love it if a family came in, we do the proactive planning, we set up a plan. In the event that things became difficult, we had everything laid out and our ducks in a row, and we're able to complete the administration of the estate, in a timely manner. One of the things I really don't enjoy is being in a situation like this and because part of the reason is there's no money on the front end to pay for the legal fees. Now I take on some cases where I get paid on the back end, but let me tell you, nobody likes to get that bill when you've gone through litigation and notices and, attempting to, deal with assets that are held in limbo, and they find out that, their inheritance, that, as much as 8-9% of it's going to the law firm because of all this work that's been done, on the front end, and getting paid on the back end. These types of things are avoidable, but, that certainly has turned into a very difficult situation for everybody involved. And the one thing they continuously complain about and are concerned about is like, why is this taking so much time? And, also, why do we have to sell these properties? Well, like you said, there's no life insurance, there's no liquidity in the estate to even have the option to make these types of decisions where maybe one grandchild wants to take over a property and could potentially reimburse the other grandchildren or something like that. So now you got people looking for a place to live. And as you know, in Philadelphia, properties that once costed $80,000 in North Philly are now going for $500,000. You used to have a 3-story, 4-story row home in, on Broad Street. You pay, $50,000 for that, when grandma was purchasing a property or grandpa was purchasing a property. Now that that's been in the family for, 2 generations, it's literally worth $500,000, sometimes more. And now the interesting thing about that, John, is that when you have a property that's worth $500,000, so Pennsylvania, and I've told you, we talked about this several times, in my opinion, it's the worst state to die in America, because they take inheritance tax from $1. So, yes, that's the state inheritance tax, not the federal inheritance tax, where you have a $13 million, $14 million coupon, per decedent. And in Pennsylvania, when assets are transferred to a son or daughter, it's taxed at 4.5%. When it's transferred to a niece or nephew, 15%. So in this case, if you have a couple of row houses, 3 row houses worth $500,000 each, $1.5 million taxed at, 4.5%, you're talking $85,000 in taxes due with no liquidity in the estate. You're looking at, essentially a forced sale of at least 1, possibly 2 properties. And all of that comes down to a lot of legal work that nobody wants to hear about when they get the final invoice after the homes are sold.
Wow.
But that's
That's
unfortunately
mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. Now, if proper planning was done on the front end with trust and those things, that can avoid that inheritance tax?
You know what? You cannot avoid inheritance tax in Pennsylvania. I've had, a number of people come in and claim that, that there's a way to avoid the inheritance tax. Other than essentially making a gift of assets, prior to passing, 1 year prior to passing or something like that. Now that has its own host of issues and problems that we're gonna have to leave for another podcast. But
Yeah.
and I would love to come on and share like why that's often not such a good idea. But for the most part, you can't avoid inheritance tax. But what you can avoid is a forced sale of the property, of having people put in a position where they're essentially evicted from a property they've been living in, and they've got to go out and find somewhere to live, with exorbitant attorney fees,
Right.
because now Ravenell's down in the stacks at City Hall, trying to track down assets, or Ravenell's got to do extra work to get these deeds done, or Ravenell's got to send out extra notices. Ravenell's got to stand in as the administrator of the estate when he goes down to City Hall because no one's able to step forward. These types of things, those types of expenses can be avoided. And a lot of times you're looking at, you could easily, and when a state could easily incur attorney fees in the $35,000 to $50,000 range for an estate worth $800,000, where there is a lot of litigation, sometimes more. And I've represented beneficiaries where we've pushed back in orphans court against attorney fees, and we've still ended up having to pay out $40,000 or $50,000, because the estate wasn't set up properly. Either there wasn't a will drafted, or the wrong executor or the wrong trustee was chosen. These sorts of things, all of these can be avoided with just if you take the time to consult with an attorney, ideally someone that cares about making sure that these types of instances are avoided, someone that cares about you and your family. That's the person you want to talk to on the front end to make sure that these types of things don't happen.
Yeah. So my takeaway is, all right, if I'm Pennsylvania, my family's not going to be able to avoid inheritance tax. That's a given. However, they can avoid $35,000 to $50,000 in legal fees and a process that may take a year or two before assets can be distributed because of probate. If I had simply spent 10% of that money on the front end to have a well-crafted estate plan to protect my family from that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
See, folks, that's why it's so important, to have this stuff done, and minimally, a will, just to let your voice be heard from the other side of what you want to have happen. That won't avoid probate, but at least you get some speak in it. But if you really want to do the right thing for your family, make things easier for those you love, a proper estate plan is the way to go. So that's the great story. I love it, and I didn't realize when we was talking about Pennsylvania. I think I told you my mother had to deal with her brother's estate a number of years ago, and he had property in New Jersey and in Florida, and that probate took over 2 years. She had to deal with
Sure.
the attorneys in Florida, attorneys in New Jersey also. At least at that time, I know had inheritance taxes. They probably still do, because once the tax is in place, it never goes away. At least the best of my knowledge.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, hey, tell me this. Um, with a demanding career and the legal work you do and a family of five, how do you balance, you know, professional and your personal life?
That's, I'm glad you asked that because this is something that has been a work in progress. Probably I think that I firmly believe that everybody born on earth is born with some sort of challenge that, they have to overcome. And in a lot of ways, I'm grateful that, this is mine, trying to figure out how to have a balanced career, time with family, and in a lot of other individuals as well. But I think that the key is teamwork and organization is the best way to try to create time to um to spend time, doing the other things that you care about, the other things that you love. And there was an individual who said something once to me that the old story about the science professor that comes in with the big empty jar and puts a bunch of rocks in it and big rocks in it, and he asks the class, hey, is this jar, is it full? And they all say yes. And then he takes a bunch of smaller rocks and he puts some in there and he says, is it full now? And they all say yes. And then he takes a bunch of pebbles and he fills it up. It's like, is it full now? And they're like, yeah. And then he brings in sand and he fills in all the nooks and cracks. And he says, is it full now? And like, it's definitely full now. And then he finishes it off with pouring a bunch of water in it. And the water comes in and he's like, all right, is it full now? And they're like, okay, now it's full. I think part of it is that a lot of us, we start off pouring a bunch of sand in our jars because we only have so much time. And now we don't have time for the big rocks of life that are really important. Whether you're supposed to go on a family vacation that I'm due to go on tomorrow, or, visit mom in another state, or, um, you know, go to a game with the kids or take the kids out or coach baseball or something like that. These are, the rocks that are very important in life. And what I found is that it's important to put those rocks in the jar first and say, this is something that's really important to me. Um, whether that's, for me now, of course, I've got a 15-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So whether it's, coaching baseball or, um, observing my eldest daughter run track, or helping my young daughter, learn how to read, or my kid, my younger son's in Japanese school, something like that. That's got to be put in first. And in order to do that and still have, a law firm that functions efficiently and effectively, to try to make sure that people are being served, that takes being able to manage a dedicated team that everybody's bought in on trying to provide services to make sure that they avoid the types of problems we've been talking about. um and as that gets more and more effective and more efficient, and as the team grows, um that's great for me because I get to do some of the other things that I love. Whether playing guitar on the worship team is something that I've done, taking my wife out for some alone time, in a dinner and a movie or dinner and a play or something like that. All that is something I really, appreciate and have grown very grateful for, as time can become very scarce, when you are a practicing attorney.
Yeah, you can get so wrapped up in stuff, and it's you know, work-life balance and self-care are so important. And I often think about it. I don't know if y'all listen to country music or not, but there's a country singer named Cody Johnson. He's got a song that's been out about a year or so, and he talks about the emphasis is, uh, you know, we'll do it another time, or we'll
Mhm.
make time until you can't, right? So he
That's right.
talks about, Dad wants to go fishing. He's like, nah, we'll go
Yes.
another
Hey,
time. There's always time, right, until you can't. So
that's
just
yeah,
not
that's
knowing, it's like that's the big rocks, right? It's your wife, your husband, your life partner, it's your children, it's your parents-in-law, people that are most important to you in life. Because again, no one ever on their deathbed said, "Man, I wish I spent more time at the office."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a song. What is it? Cats in the Cradle.
Yeah,
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 that's
the old Cat Stevens song, "Cats in
oh
the
my
Cradle."
gosh. That,
Yeah,
I heard it as a I heard
you're
that
not
song.
even old enough to know
I
that,
know,
Bill.
right? Yeah. But what's funny is I heard that song when I was a kid and it was just, kind of water under the bridge. And then I heard it again, 3 years ago, and it just, oh my God, it's waterworks. I can't even listen to the song now. It's just, weeping big tears. I kind of
Uh,
see this kind of potentially this sort of karmic, occurrence happening. Son, I can't throw the ball. I can't, you know, can't go swimming with you. And then man, it can come around very quickly where you're in a position where now dad retires and he's got time and it's yeah, it's so important. It's so important to try to make sure that the things that are really, really important in life, just family, that
oh,
gets the time that it needs.
absolutely. I mean, at this point, my our kids run between ages 25 now and uh, 37, 38, and they're all doing different things, and they're scattered about. But yeah, my one son, who's in his late 20s down here, he and his wife, they just had their first child. My grandchild, uh, get to see him, quite a bit. Looking forward to this weekend. Going to get to see again. But as I look at things and say, man, here's my kids. Now they're grown up. They've got kids. Now I'm a grandpa, and it's like I look back, and I did a lot. I coached basketball, soccer, did all
Oh
that
yeah.
stuff. But you still look back and say, man, I wish I'd done more. I wish I'd been more present,
Mm.
right? So it's the only thing that gets us through, right? So it's awesome. Well, I'm excited for you. I'm excited. I know we were talking before we started, and you mentioned it here that you and the family are heading off on vacation tomorrow. So enjoy that. Try and not work a lot or too much. Only what has to be done. But this has really been wonderful, Bill. I always love our conversation, and so happy to have you on here. Sharing your journey, the innovative work you're doing, your work life balance. Hey, I know you've got a lot of great content on social media, a lot of short, informative videos and that kind of stuff. How can the audience connect with you if they want to reach out, just general questions, or if they're in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, want to get their planning done?
Sure, absolutely. Well, listen, if you want to connect with me, a great place is we've got a Facebook page for Ravenell Law. You can certainly connect with us on our website, Ravenell Law, and like you can book, a short appointment with a team member. Um, and and I'm also, if you do, I've got a lot of educational content on, I think, like TikTok and Instagram as well. And also on the website, we've got a robust group of blogs talking about, various issues and challenges that we all go through and how to avoid them. Those would be, the best way to get in contact.
Oh, that's awesome. And for the audience, look, feel free to reach out to Bill. I mean, he is just the real deal. There's no question about it. With any general questions or concerns. And I will make it really easy because I've included all of his contact information in the show notes. So link to his website, link to their office email is there. You'll find his Facebook, his LinkedIn profile, Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff where you can find the great stuff. So I'd encourage you to reach out. Hey, Bill, thanks again. This has been delightful.
Absolutely, John. A pleasure talking to you.
Okay. And as always, my friends, your life is your legacy. So plan ahead and make it a great day.